Hello, everyone, and welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodríguez, and boy, oh boy, did we have a Tuesday in Cowboys Nation. Randy Gregory agreed to a 5-year contract with the Cowboys until everything fell apart. He is now headed to the Denver Broncos. The Cowboys, Gregory, all of them are taking the blame from different spots. We'll try to break it down on tonight's show and just try to make the best out of this absolute unacceptable chaos that the Cowboys find themselves in. Of course, after tonight, we will likely move on from it. But hey, it has been such a crazy Tuesday, and we are going to try to break it all down and walk out of here with the best idea possible and the clearest picture out of this messy situation that the Cowboys had going on the team. So anyways, welcome everyone. As always, make sure that you hit the like button, share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. And hey, share the stream. As always, that allows us to continue to grow the show and grow the Cowboys community. I need to start the show by shouting out Charlene Evans. I hit the like button, says Charlene in the chat, for you and Sky to do another crossover series or show. And thank you for the big donation, Charlene. I really appreciate it. Sky does as well, for sure. And now we cannot mess around anymore. Sky and I need to put this together. We need to put this series or show together next week. So I will DM him as soon as the show is over. Thank you to Charlene for the support to the channel and to all of you guys. Make sure that you hit the like button, share the stream. Help me not feel sick to my stomach, says Vance Big. Hey, that is the idea of tonight's episode. What is up, everyone? Thank you to Lumen, Burner Account, Bruce, Miss over there in the YouTube chat, Chuck Fritgen, of course, Kenneth Fraser as well. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Let's start the show officially, and let's get into it right away. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodríguez. The show, as always, is brought to you by our friends over at Freeman Mazda. We will talk more about them and their Freeman prices in a few moments here on the show. But as always, streaming with you live Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network, with a lot more content coming your way throughout the entire offseason. Check out adcsports.com/Dallas, in which we had quite a ride this morning, because you guys know this already. But at first, the Cowboys announced, the Malik Hooker 2-year contract. And we will discuss that as well at the end of the show. And we were excited about it. Malik Hooker, good player. The Cowboys kind of solidifying their defensive backfield, knowing who will be one of the starting safeties for the team, likely. We'll discuss that later in the show. Kind of a good news day. And then the bomb dropped. The Cowboys agreeing to a 5-year contract for $70 million. The number that was guaranteed, according to reports, were $28 million. So sounded like a good deal for the Cowboys. $14 million per year would have made Gregory the 19th highest edge rusher in the NFL, highest paid edge rusher in terms of annual per year. But then it all fell apart. What was the weirdest part out of this, in my opinion, is not that it fell apart quickly, is that it didn't fall apart that quickly. So it wasn't like the report came out and then someone backpedaled on it to make a correction or anything like that. No, the report was up there and it lasted a while up there. You had the Cowboys confirm the signing on their social media. You had Randy Gregory's agent being quoted by the Dallas Morning News essentially confirming that a deal was in place, and the Cowboys Nation was excited about it. Fans were excited as heck about the whole thing. Randy Gregory was coming back to the Dallas Cowboys. And not only that, it was the perfect conclusion to a player who has faced all kinds of adversity, as Jerry Jones himself called it in training camp last year, real life problems, and he was finally cashing in on it. Randy Gregory was, just putting the bow on what has been a remarkable fight. And the Cowboys, who have been able to support Gregory for a long time when they could have just walked away from him years ago when he was facing suspension after suspension, they didn't. They stuck by him. Now, we'll talk more about how big that support really was, because I think that we need to applaud the support, but I also think that some people are kind of blinded by what it really was, but we'll get to that later. It was just a feel-good story, right, to start off our Tuesday. And then the notification started coming in on it being kind of a little bit of, not fake news, because it happened. The Cowboys and Gregory agreed to the deal. But then the notification came that, hey, Denver is still on it, and the Broncos are going to end up signing Randy Gregory. So a lot has been said since then, as you guys know, and a lot has been said. And to be honest, there are very reliable reporters out there who are not on the same page. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because you have Gregory's camp, you have the Cowboys camp, and you get a lot of sources there, right? So, as always, here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime, I'm not pretending to be anything that I'm not. So I will tell you right off the bat, I don't have any insider information. I don't have any sources, but I'm going to share my opinion based on what we have heard from credible reporters like Mike Fisher is, like Patrick Walker is, like Bobby Belt is, all of which maybe do not have the same standing or the same posture in this conversation, but we're going to take all of those comments into account, and we'll try to reach an opinion on tonight's show. So, the problem, as you guys know, is that after the Cowboys had agreed to a deal with Randy Gregory, there was a little extra in Randy Gregory's contract when he was going to sign it. And that little extra, and excuse me for the 40 million guaranteed, 30 million fully guaranteed on that, below the tweet in the picture that we're using. I forgot to delete that from last night's DeMarcus Lawrence graphic, so my bad there on the production side of things. But this is a Slater tweet from this morning, or from this afternoon. She says, and one other note, not only was this language not in Denver's contract, and by the language, all right, before we get to Slater's tweet, let's talk about that. The scandal or the drama emerges from a forfeiture clause that was included in Randy Gregory's contract at what seems to be the 11th hour, right? After they had agreed to a contract. This forfeiture clause was included, and we'll get into whether or not it's in the contracts and all of that, and what's the big problem in a bit here. But this later tweet seems to me like this is the one big thing that happened in the Gregory Cowboys negotiation and debacle. I will read Slater's tweet straight up. And one other note, not only was this language not in Denver's contract, but the frustration was that it's not according to Randy's camp in any other team contract, and not once mentioned at all during negotiations. That's the real source of angst here. They felt lied to. So a lot of people have been saying that the clause is standard for the team and they use it in every other player's contract, but there seems to be some disagreement as to whether or not that exact clause is the one that it's in every single contract. So there seems to be some disagreement there. Bobby Belt also broke it down on 105.3 The Fan earlier today, and he did a great job doing so. And then you had, of course, Patrick Walker on Catch This Fade in the podcast, which is a great podcast as well. And he kind of broke it down in terms of not being the language of the clause itself, but being the principle behind it. So you can listen to their podcast at Catch This Fade. I really recommend it. But basically, what I walk away from hearing all of these reports after a tumultuous morning and afternoon, I think that what we can take away first and foremost is the fact that they kind of did throw it in at the last moment. And Gregory was reportedly taking less money from the Cowboys than he could have from the Denver Broncos. So if you go through all of that, if you go through the negotiations and you get to a point in which you close the gap between the Cowboys offer and the Broncos offer, like it was reported by Patrick Walker this Tuesday, if you manage to close that gap, if you go through all of the negotiation process and then at the last moment they say, oh, and by the way, there's this clause, how come you don't feel a little bit betrayed after you already know that you're taking less money from the Cowboys because you want to stay in Dallas? And then Bobby Belt on 105.3 The Fan, again, we don't have any insider information on tonight's show. We're just having an opinion based on what we've heard from multiple reporters. Bobby Belt kind of peeled back the curtain to offer us a little bit of insight as to how this was not really about the clause only, but rather about an entire process in which the Cowboys were not really operating in good faith with Randy Gregory. Starting by the fact that they told him that he was a priority during the season, only to, when the time came, to tell him that, hey, we need to get the Marcus Lawrence cap number fixed before we get to you. So it kind of feels like this was a ramp-up process up to a moment in which we arrived to a tipping point in the 11th hour when the Cowboys threw in that clause in Randy Gregory's contract. It's difficult. It's difficult to kind of break down because there's a lot of conflicting information out there. So what I'm going to do is, as you guys know, we always do questions here in the show on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. This is not trying to reach a full-time answer or like a final answer on who is to blame on this debacle in Dallas, but it's more of like, I want to poll you guys. I want to get to know what this sentiment overall is here on Primetime. So whose camp is to blame, in your opinion, in the Cowboys-Gregory debacle? I know there's a lot of information out there. There's blame to both sides. But if you had to choose one, which side would you choose to blame? More than anything, think of it as a poll so we can get an idea of what the sentiment right now in the room is. While you do that, while you give me your answers, let me talk to you about our friends over at freemanmazda.net, because they are getting ready to announce the first ever Mazda CX-50, and that is this week's ride of the week. It is the first ever brand new model from Mazda CX-50, only available for pre-order. Inventory is expected soon over at freemanmazda.net. It's a new, spacious, wide stance SUV built for the outdoors with off-road drive modes, sunroof, and roof rails. It's got Drive Select, and it's got the same tech features available in other 2022 models. So make sure that you check out freemanmazda.net. It's a family-owned business for over 65 years, and they have great customer service. Plus, they've got a wide variety of new and used Mazda vehicles. So make sure you check out freemanmazda.net. Let's see some of your answers. And I know that I need to get to the comments here. I need to get to the comments. Stevie Mack says the Jones, obviously. Burner account says Stephen Clown Jones. Danny Savage says both. G. Munoz says the agent, and I think that's a smart answer. I will get to that in a moment as well. Bruce that is a patented, copyrighted Skywalker Steel single, by the way. Catboy, what you gonna do? Nobody likes Stephen Jones as icebergs lame. Chalk says the Jones are to blame. Primetime Field goes with Gregory. David says Randy's agent hands down. Stephen Arthur says no one, it is always in his contract. Even when he first signed the contract with Dallas the first year, that clause was always there. There seems to be some disagreement there, though. There seems to be some disagreement because, listen, here's Todd Arker's tweet, for example, from ESPN. Todd Arker tweeted out the forfeiture clause that caused the rift that led to Randy Gregory agreeing to a deal with Denver is in the deal he signed as a rookie in 2015. As others have said, it's a standard for the Cowboys except for Dak Prescott's contract. Other teams also had that language as well. Now, although Todd Arker is saying other teams also have that language as well, it is worth pointing out that it doesn't seem to be standard for the rest of the league. Might be standard for the Cowboys. Other teams might have that language too, but it doesn't seem to be the standard across the entire league. Now, although there's that tweet from Todd Arker, there's also this tweet from Jane Slater, which says, according to Randy's camp, it's not in any other team's contract and not once mentioned at all during negotiations. And that's the one big thing for me. The fact that, listen, the Cowboys have been doing this for a long time, as you probably surely know, and it seems kind of a big deal, especially knowing Randy Gregory's history, to not include it in the negotiation, in the conversation. It seems, I believe, kind of shady to drop it in at the final moment. Whether it's a standard or not, whether everyone in the Cowboys has this clause or not, to me, the biggest question of all, was it not in the agreement before they agreed to it? Because it seems like it wasn't in the agreement when the agreement was reached. And if it wasn't, you cannot just throw it in there at the last moment. Or maybe you can, but you need to also kind of approach the situation in a proper way. And that's where I also say that's my second biggest question of the entire thing, where Randy and his agent fully on the same page. Because there are some speculating that maybe they were not on the same page. Something must have been said verbally, says Wilson Santiago. Broncos are going to be a force next year, says Joel Wilson. We will also move on from the entire, scandal here and talk about what's next for the Cowboys and their need for an edge rusher and all of that. So we're not stuck on that. Now, I know, and again, for those of you who are just joining the show right now, I know Mike Fisher showed the contracts, and I fully respect Mike Fisher, and I think that he is a great Cowboys reporter and really someone that everyone in the industry needs to look up to, for sure. But I think the same about Patrick Walker, and I think the same about Bobby Belt from 105.3 The Fan. So we should all just be in here on the, we should all be on the same page here that, yeah, we're listening to different stuff by a lot of different reporters. And that is fine because the reporters at the end of the day are reporting information that it's being, provided to them from multiple sources, from single sources. But for example, you have Patrick Walker citing multiple sources. And Patrick Walker is a legit sports journalist, CBS Sports Insider. In his podcast, he talked about how he reached out to Randy Gregory himself. So we're not kind of going against a single reporter here or against a bunch of reporters. We need to acknowledge, first and foremost, that multiple credible reporters are kind of at a conflicting point right now in this conversation. And that's okay. Burner account. Yeah, well, I agree with Darcy. All very reputable reporters. I will not question any of them. But taking into consideration all of their perspectives, I kind of go back to the fact of, was it thrown in at the last moment or not? And was it really the same clause? And I don't know if we will ever find out for sure, because I know that Bobby Belt on 105.3 The Fan said that maybe there was some disagreement there, that maybe every contract has a forfeiture clause, but maybe it's not the exact same. And then there's, of course, Patrick Walker saying that it's not about the language itself, it's about the principle, the fact that it was not brought up at all during negotiations, which is something that Jane Slater is also reporting on her Twitter account and on NFL Network. The fact that it was not brought up at all during the negotiations. And I know that we don't have a lot of, I know that Cowboys Nation, will hate on the front office for a lot of reasons, and maybe rightfully so, because they do a lot of stuff in a questionable manner. But I respect them enough to doubt that it wasn't by design, the fact that they didn't brought it up until the very last moment. I kind of doubt that they did not brought it up because they forgot to do so. Like you ignore, like you forget to include your name in a project or a homework for school. Let's see some of your comments here in the chat, because I know that Cowboys Nation is lit right now. Let's see. Either way, get Von Miller and Bobby Wagner stat. That's going to be like the damage control for the Cowboys. We'll see if it happens. We'll get to that on tonight's show. Now, guys, I will tell you what, though. I've seen some, David says Randy didn't know that it was in the first contract. And that is another valid question. Again, were Randy and his agent on the same page? We know that, and I think multiple reporters have said this, that Randy's current agent was not there when Lyle, he also represents Lyle Collins. I think this was said by Mike Fisher on his live stream earlier today. And he said that he wasn't representing Lyle Collins before, when his latest deal was done. Bruce Got the Use says, so what you're saying, Mo, okay, that's a good question, is that the front office bungled this deal? Honestly, I think so. Even if it's not because of the clause alone. But it does feel like the Cowboys wanted Randy Gregory back, yet their actions failed to reflect that properly. They allowed the tampering period to get here before they re-signed Randy's deal. So you can talk to me about Jerry Jones being mad and being upset because the extension was super personal to him, because of the relationship that he has had with Randy Gregory. And you can talk to me about him being very upset because the deal didn't get done. But at the end of the day, you didn't really prioritize him. You didn't make him a priority for the Cowboys. If that was the case, he would have been re-signed a while ago. You wouldn't have let the tampering period get here. You wouldn't have bet that other teams in the market were not going to go after Randy Gregory and outbid you for him. So, I don't know. I feel like they did bungle this deal. I think that they messed up. And then there's a segment of Cowboys Nation, and I get where they're coming from, but I will share with you my opinion about this narrative, which I hate. I have applauded here in the show. I have said that one thing that we need to recognize from the front office is that they were there for Randy Gregory and they supported him even when he was suspended indefinitely in 2019 in February. Even then, the Cowboys were not giving up on Randy Gregory. They were there for him. Yet some fans kind of interpret that as, oh, Gregory is in debt with the Cowboys. Hell no. Hell no, he's not. He doesn't owe anything to the Cowboys. Because the Cowboys, although they were there for him and although they were supporting him, they were doing it for a reason. They wanted Randy to play. And they got a very talented pass rusher at a discount discount relative to what his market value would have been if his circumstances were different. So yeah, I respect that the front office did it, and I love that they stuck by him. But they don't. Gregory does not owe anything to the Cowboys. Not only that, but the guy has made under $6 million in his career. So we're not talking about Gregory making one of the highest salaries in the NFL to play at the position. So I really do not think that Gregory owed something to the Dallas Cowboys. Respect for the Cowboys to bet on him, but at the end of the day, they were doing it for a reason, and they were benefited from the fact that he was playing for the Cowboys. And he's not, I hate that people like call him names when what he was dealing with was a sickness, because addiction at the end of the day is an illness, and sometimes it ties into more serious mental health issues, and Randy Gregory has been open about it. So it kind of sucks when fans kind of pile on him because he had to battle with addiction. It sucks because it's an illness at the end of the day. I can see that in the Facebook chat, we're getting a lot of like controversy going around. Oh yeah, including from Michael Barrios, that he says, I'm unfollowing this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's good though. Joel Wilson says, bye, Felicia. Primetime Phil says, it's in the past. You should always want to help people. Thank you, says Bruce. That man has a family to think about for sure. 100%. And he wasn't making the kind of money that makes you think. He wasn't making the kind of money that makes you think, oh, he's just crying over $1 or $2 more, right? Stephen Mack says, make sure that you smack that like button just like you want to smack Stephen Jones. Danny Savage says, you cannot be addicted to marijuana. All right, I don't know about the medical side of things, but I can tell you something, though. Maybe addiction is not the right word, but if you're battling mental illness and you're kind of treating it via the use of marijuana, then that's something important, and that's something that you cannot hate on. Like mentally, I think that's something. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if what I'm going to say is correct. But if you're dealing with a mental illness with a substance, and that substance eases your pain or your mental health problems, then I would say that you can get kind of, Dario is calling it psychologically addictive, I guess. Again, I'm not a doctor, and you shouldn't listen to me for medical opinions, but you guys know what I mean, even if addiction is not the right word. You're using that substance to treat a mental illness. If you're thinking about family, don't get suspended, same money, says David. David, but it's not that easy. And maybe it's hard to empathize with it when you have not had those kind of issues. But Gregory had them, and Gregory had to deal with it. You know, Gregory was dealing with mental health problems. This is not an opinion. This is something that we know. And the way that he treated it was that way, with the use of marijuana. So it's not like, it's not like this guy is immature or gets into trouble because of discipline. It's not like he misses meetings, like he doesn't show up to train and stuff like that. It's a deeper problem at the end of the day. Full Canelli says, Mo, do you cover the Dallas Mavericks? Can we talk about Luka Doncic's Dante ankles? I don't cover the Mavericks. I watch them, but I will admit that I'm a filthy casual when it comes to the NBA. But you can check out on adcsports.com/Dallas, though. You can catch Mavericks articles as well. even though we got a lot of Cowboys articles up there this week because it's free agency. You can also catch Mavericks coverage on adcsports.com. Burner account, Michael says, I'm a bet with PTSD. It's not that easy at all. Man, I will tell you the truth. I cannot imagine. I just can't. But I know that there's something, I know that we need to empathize with it. James says, it's called dual diagnosis and it's the hardest to treat in the mental health field. Yeah. Gilbert Rodriguez says, I have been smoking for 50 years and I caught it. My depression medicine works for me. Everybody is different. There you go. There you go. It's not that easy, guys. And we need to be better, I believe, when we're discussing players and people in general with dealing with this kind of stuff, right? Dealing with this stuff. So I don't know, like my invitation here for you guys who are listening to the show on Primetime is don't say that stuff about, calling Gregory certain names and stuff. I will tell you that at the very least, Gregory got the bag and we're happy for him here on Primetime. Would have loved to see him do that with the Cowboys, of course. Would have loved to see him stay in Dallas for a long time. And I'm sure that this is not the last time that we'll talk about this blunder. Everyone shares a part of the blame. Landon, for example, McCool over at Twitter. If you're on Cowboys Twitter, you probably know him. He's on as Killing Moore. That's a good name, by the way, for Twitter. He tweeted out a stand that I also kind of agreed with. Most of the criticism against Randy Gregory, I believe, has been mostly BS. But Killen Moore, for example, pointed out, well, maybe he could have gone back to the negotiation, the table. He could have gone back to the table. And I think I agree with that. I think that would have been fair. Like, all right, you don't like that they're bringing up the clause, but maybe at least try to discuss it. But also, I understand that this might have been the last straw. It's a difficult conversation. But anyways, moving on, at least for tonight, moving on. Now, edge rusher is a big need for Dallas Cowboys. And I will ask you the following question. Is Von Miller's interest a big deal, small deal, or no deal? And when I say Von Miller's reported interest, I do not mean the Cowboys' interest on Von Miller, but James Slater reported that Von Miller was very interested in playing in Dallas, and he has a home in Dallas, so it sounds like the Cowboys could get the perfect redemption moments or hours or one day after the Gregory thing went down the drain. Because right now, I believe that you could make the argument that edge rusher is maybe even a top 3 need for the Cowboys. I love Micah Parsons. I think that he's a great pass rusher, but we go back to the same thing. The Cowboys do not want to tie Micah Parsons to only one assigned role. They want to be versatile with him. They want to do a little bit of everything with Micah. So you need to get a pass rusher to play on the other side, opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence. Now the question was, is Von Miller's reported interest a big deal, small deal, or no deal? RB Nightmare says small deal. Danny Savage goes with a no deal. Vance Big says the real deal. So a lot of different answers here. Charlene Evans, no deal. We will be in the playoffs, says Charles Moore. Right now, I agree with it. Primetime Phil says it's big if you can follow it up. Timothy, however, says, I will believe it when I see it. Then he says small deal. He's going to want a Super Bowl. He's going to go on Super Bowl ring money, and we ain't going to pay for it. Gilbert goes with big deal. Bruce says medium deal. All right, let's talk about it. The Cowboys have the cap space. They were going to use it on a certain pass rusher. Von Miller is 2 years older than Randy Gregory, so it makes sense. I don't know if they will do it though. The Cowboys have earned doubt from us whenever we link them to a particular free agent, right? It sounds like the interest is real, and Jane Slater compared it to the Earl Thomas rumors, among other former free agents rumors, and she said that, hey, this one sounds different. This one sounds like it could happen. And then you have the Marcus Ware kind of recruiting on social media. Michael Parsons doing the same, and even Von Miller replying to the Marcus Ware with the eyes emojis. So it sounds like the interest is real, but the big problem is that Ed Werder, for example, from ESPN, tweeted out the key component of this conversation, which is if the financials make sense or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing right now. But Ed Werder did make that clarification, which is very common when it comes to the Cowboys, in which you hear, yes, they're interested if the asking price makes sense. And that is the big question. Will Von Miller ask for over $14 million per year, which is what Randy was going to make with his 5-year contract? To do so, Von Miller would have to be the 19th or worst in the average salary per year's rankings of the NFL, because that's where 14 million would rank in the current market. 18 other edge rushers are paid over $14 million per year. And I don't know about you guys, but I kind of doubt that the Cowboys maybe can get it done. Listen, let's take a look at the edge rushers right now over at overthecap.com. Hassan Reddick makes $15 million per year. Carl Lawson makes $15 per year. Leonard Floyd, 16. But the pre 16.5. Do you think that Von Miller will make less than those guys? Von Miller was on a contract with the Rams in which he averaged $19 million per year. $19 million per year was his last contract, the one that he signed in, what was it, in 2016, I believe. 6-year deal for $114.5 million. But Von Miller ranked up there, according to overthecap.com. Rich says, Miller is a waste of money. Cowboys need to stop going after big names that are old, says Rich. To be fair, I don't know that they do that, and I kind of think that we complain that they don't go after the big names. But I think that Von Miller can still play and perform at a high level. I think that you wouldn't make a 5-year commitment, maybe, but it also has to do with how much guaranteed money is involved there. Right now, my final answer would be small deal. I don't think that Von Miller will play with the Dallas Cowboys in 2022, although I agree. The interest sounds real, though. Hector, if you could get him cheaper than what you're paying DeMarcus Lawrence, it is a good deal. Ooh, I don't know that you would be able to do so, even though I like Lawrence a lot. It's a good question. I think you could get him. It's a good question comment from Hector. The thing about it, though, is that maybe Lawrence is not making that much in average per year, but because he has 30 million fully guaranteed, would you guarantee 100% 30 million for Von Miller? Maybe not, right? Joe Wilson says Miller had 16 and a half sacks last year. That is a crazy number, by the way. Ruben says Von Miller will be a beast. I agree with that. I still think that Miller can play at a very high level. But right now, I don't think that the Cowboys will end up with him. I will be a pessimist in that conversation because, I have talked about the Bobby Wagner deal as well, and it kind of sounds like the same conversation that we usually have with the Cowboys and big free agents. Like, it will fall apart when the bidding war starts. Mo says, Michael, why can't the Jones understand? You get what you pay for. Stop trying to win. every deal. I think that's a fair comment as well. I think it is fair to stay away from the biggest of names in free agency because those guys usually are overpaid. But you also, that doesn't mean go and look for the bargains only in free agency, which is the side of the spectrum in which the Cowboys end up always. Tank is the only defensive end, says Joel Wilson, to have 7 years in a row, full guaranteed money. Yeah, we actually talked a little bit about it last night. Hey, shout out to DeMarcus Lawrence. It was all supposed to end with Randy Gregory with the Cowboys. But shout out to him for, reworking his deal with the Cowboys. Now, make no mistake about it. He was a big winner on that deal, and we talked about it last night in case you missed it. Lawrence is not taking a pay cut, but still shout out for him being willing to go back to the negotiating table. James says, can anyone remember the last big name free agent the Cowboys have signed? Kind of thinking about it right now, but I cannot think of any particular one that I can say that was a big free agent signing. Because we wouldn't be able to include Cowboys, right? We wouldn't be including Cowboys. I think that wouldn't be fair if we include in-house players. Andy Dalton says Joel Wilson. Oh, no. Basically, a big hot top at this point is burner account after burner account said, welcome to the pessimist pool, Mo. Water is warm down here. Well, I will always remain sort of an optimist in general. But with the free agent side of things, I will say that I'm in the pessimist side of things. Brandon Carr is the answer, I believe, from that guy over at YouTube. I think Brandon Carr is the answer. I cannot think of anyone else. Gilbert says T.O. Jeremy had also mentioned Brandon Carr. Alpha Mason. Now, this is the most depressing answer of them all. Because Alpha Mason might be right, which is the depressing side of things. Dion. 1994, was it? To give you an idea, I think it was 1994. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But if it was 1994, I can tell you that I was more or less, in terms of my own age, I was minus 5 years old. So that should give you an idea. I'm 22 years old, for those of you who are new to the show. I think it was 1994. Burner account says, LOL, Mo, were you even alive when Sanders played? That was what I was getting to. The best was Charles Haley, Timothy Harrison. Man, it's sad that during the wild card week, I read a lot of Cowboys 49ers stories, and it was a depressing way to end that week with the Cowboys loss to the 49ers. But anyways, edge rusher, big need for the Cowboys if they don't address it via free agency. And by the way, free agents are paying attention to what happened today in Dallas. And they're not going to dive into the details to kind of figure out who was wrong on this particular event. But I can assure you that players, as players themselves, will kind of side with Randy Gregory. And that's another thing that you never know how big of an impact it is going to make. The fact that the Cowboys kind of messed this one up. Free agents are aware of that. And I think that also plays an impact over the long term whenever they are willing to go and get a free agent and the deals are the same. The deciding factors can be the team's history, right? In how they handle their own players even. Another way to address the edge rusher position would be with the 24th overall pick right away. The Cowboys might be in a position to draft, for example, George Karlaftis from Purdue, who we have talked about on the show before. So stay tuned for that. And before I leave you tonight, because we are running on the long side of things on tonight's show, we usually end this show at the 35, 40-minute mark. A little bit of Cowboys catch up because there were some additional news in the Cowboys world. And that was more than anything the fact that the Cowboys brought back Malik Hooker on a 2-year contract for $8 million. The question for you guys is, do you believe that Malik Hooker is the Cowboys starting free safety in 2022? The Cowboys also signed Jeremy Sprinkle, as Burner account is bringing up in the YouTube chat. I don't even know what he signed for, to be honest. I'm assuming that it was the minimum, but I'm not sure. Yes or no, is Malik Hooker the Cowboys starting free safety in 2022? Kind of wanted to bring that question up because I kind of think so. DeMonte Casey is still a free agent. I would be surprised if he is brought back to the Cowboys after they signed Malik Hooker. I think that the priority right now and the player that we are all thinking about now is Jaron Kears, who plays a different role within the Cowboys defense. But Malik Hooker, big deal bringing him back, in my opinion. $4 million per year. He was healthy in 2022, even after an Achilles injury. The Cowboys need a quality free safety for their defense to work. That's what Dan Quinn's defense is based on in the secondary. You play man-to-man coverage. The Cowboys played cover one at the highest rate in the NFL. That's a single high safety playing a deep zone with the cornerbacks playing man-to-man coverage and an extra underneath player. But that free safety up high, that is a centerpiece of Dan Quinn's defenses. Before, they were mostly zone defenses, but with the Cowboys in 2021, they played a lot of man coverage. Middle of the field closed, which is what you call a defense with that high safety in the middle. The Cowboys played at the third highest rate in the NFL with the middle of the field closed. Also, one of the teams that played the most one-shell defenses in the league. So getting that free safety right was a big task for the Cowboys, and they're betting on Malik Hooker to be that guy, I believe. People in the chat kind of agree with it being, with him being the starter. That says, yes, he is. Wilson says, I think so. Casey should be signed, says Joel Wilson. If they can get him on a similar deal like they did last year, I'm all for it. I think Hooker is our starter, says Jeremy. People all agree with it. Bruce says, don't forget we signed long snapper Mo, so we can rest easier now. Yes, they got Jake McQuaid's deal done too. Hooker touches Timothy Harrison. I laughed, I'm sorry. Hard to get a good safety, says Dario. Dallas Young says, Hook was hitting up towards the end of the year. He really was, and he played less than 40% of the defensive snaps for the Cowboys, while Casey played nearly 80%. So that will likely change, though, I believe. So happy for Malik, says Charlene Evans. He has overcome a lot of injuries. Yeah, I'm happy for him as well. Great talent out of Ohio State, first-round talent, and people said that he could be the most athletic safety in the NFL right away, but the injuries didn't let him do so early in his career. So maybe we're getting into the best years of Malik Hooker, even though he is a veteran player now. He's not that young. He's not that youngster that is going to take over the league when he first got in the NFL. All we can do is laugh today, says Timothy Harrison. Yeah. So to sum it up, before we leave tonight, just one more takeaway, because I know that the Randy Gregory conversation can be a messy one. My recommendation here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime is to not go all in, maybe with what one single reporter is saying, but try to understand where everyone is coming from and try to reach an opinion as unbiased as possible. In my opinion, after hearing all of what we have heard from multiple reporters, from multiple media outlets, like we discussed earlier on the show, I kind of lean towards this one being on the Cowboys. And Gregory and his agent maybe deserve part of the blame, mainly for not being willing to, go back to the negotiating table after the clause thing happened. But it seems like the Cowboys were kind of playing with fire with their relationship with Randy Gregory, starting by the fact they let this go into the tampering period of free agency. So the treatment headed towards Randy Gregory maybe was not the best during this entire process. I recommend you listening to the Catch This Fade podcast. I recommend to listening to Mike Fisher's live stream from today. I think those two shows will be on opposite sides of the spectrum, and you kind of reach an opinion from there. Kind of sucks though. Whoever was to blame, the Cowboys did not get what they wanted, and Gregory likely did not get what he wanted because he wanted to stay in Dallas. Both sides, hey, you talk about a win-win a lot of the times. This was a lose-lose, and it sucks. And it sucks that it happened this way. But good for Gregory, though, on getting paid. I truly am happy about it. He deserves it. The guy has worked his butt off on the field and off the field. With that, I will leave you one of the longest primetime episodes ever. But as always, make sure that you hit the like button, share the show. We're here every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. Check out adcsports.com/Dallas. As always, primetime brought to you by our friends over at freemanmazda.net. Check out the brand new Mazda model, the CX-50. That is the ride of the week. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for joining the show. I really appreciate it. It was a difficult one because it was a controversial one. Thank you to Dallas, Charlene, Stevie Mac, Full, Canelli, Stevie Mac, as always, burner account. Thank you guys for the support. And once again, shout out to Charlene Evans for the donation. That was amazing. So welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.